All right, let's get to rating this thing.
Label branding.
Woodford Reserve Distillers Select. Label branding. What are you getting at?
A.
Just an A?
Yeah.
Really? Why?
Because it's not... It doesn't blow me away. You know? Like, you're not buying a bottle. You're buying the product and the name. Where there's some things on the market where you buy the bottle as well. Mm-hmm. You know, like, more so with Scotch. Like, when you open Scotch, it's an experience.
Right.
It's like the Apple products of liquor. Mm-hmm. Because you're getting... The bottles are gorgeous. They're all individually wrapped with, like, a wrapping paper that's branded. Then it's inside of its own box. Like, it's just this big to-do. Even Crown has a nice experience of opening a bottle. Yeah. With this, it's just like, that's on the shelf, and then you just grab it and walk away, and you're like, I know what I'm getting. It's Woodford. True. But it's not like, it doesn't blow you away.
So, I agree with you.
From a marketing 100%. Standpoint, it doesn't blow you away.
From 100%. I completely agree with you. So you have your overrated bourbons, like people think that, or whiskeys, I should say, that people think as soon as you think of bourbon, you think of this brand, or whiskey, like Crown, Jack Daniels, Jim Beam. To me, those are very overrated because they're just overdone. From the more, like, taking that step further into the whiskey world, I think this is on the top of the list of being overrated because everybody that wants to impress somebody with bourbon that takes that next step of saying, I'm not going to get them Jim Beam or Crown or something like that, goes to Woodford Reserve. For some reason, this is a default once you pass that first stage of whiskey.
It might be the price point, too.
Could be, yeah. But also, a lot of people know the Woodford brand, and I don't think that it's as impressive as like a Devil's River or impressive as an Elijah Craig or something along those lines. For some reason, I feel like people like gravitate more to a Woodford, and I don't think that it is the best bang for your buck.
Okay. So what would you rate it?
I'd give it an A, but that's why I wouldn't give it like an A++ like we've been doing a lot lately, because we've been having some great whiskeys on, but I don't think that this is too new to be a staple of like a Crown Royal or Jack Daniels or Jim Beam, but it's also too, I don't know, I just think of Woodford as just the bland bourbon that like everybody gravitates to because it's something cool to say, but it's not that impressive to drink.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first.
Do you feel the same or no?
Kind of. Yeah. It's extremely overpriced in bars, first of all. Like, if you have a Woodford Old Fashioned, that's like a $15 cocktail.
And I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, but I didn't explain it correctly. Woodford has an expensive brand, but a not expensive taste. That's what I was getting at. Because people associate this with being an elite bourbon, and this is not an elite bourbon. That's what I was getting at. I could have phrased that 1,000% better to make my point even more consistent across, but I went on a rabbit hole, but ultimately that's what I'm getting at. For some reason, people think this is an elite bourbon and they think it's impressive to bring this over for company, but this is the most overrated bourbon in my opinion.
You know what this goes really, really well with?
The Drain. What?
No.
Oh.
Jesus. So this isn't gonna resonate with a lot of our listeners, but for those that do, this specific Woodford goes extremely well with a cigar or a pipe.
Sure.
Because the smoke cuts some of the hug, and it literally just makes it so much smoother. And then if you have this on the rocks, you're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to crush most of the bottle in a sitting.
And that's actually a good point, because I do not hate Woodford. I don't. I actually do enjoy this. But I think that people who are outside of the whiskey world treat this as being an elite beverage when it's not. And they don't make it out to be an elite beverage. This is not priced to be an elite beverage. But people in bars and bartenders and bar owners treat this as an elite beverage to make it cost more to have an old-fashioned with this in there, like you were saying. So I completely agree with you. This, to me, is a cocktail whiskey, cocktail bourbon, or something over ice. Normally, I don't put whiskey over ice, but this one does go very well over ice because it just adds that different like complexity and the chill factor, too, with it. So I do like this, but just not neat. So Label branding, A. Nose, what do you get for the nose?
Caramel and honey. It's overpowering. Little vanilla.
Little vanilla, yep. Yeah, caramel, honey, vanilla. This is a very typical bourbon.
Yeah. A.
Yep, A. Initial taste. I'm getting a little baking spice on the front.
That's what actually incorporates the burn and the high hug.
Yeah.
It's an extremely high hug. It sits literally in the roof of your mouth and doesn't travel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm getting baking spice.
Like a maple?
That's just because you just had it. I'm almost getting no maple. You really get maple? I'm not. It's probably lingering from the distillate that you crushed recently. Proud of you.
No, you're right. Not maple. Caramel.
Yeah.
Caramel in the initial sip. My B.
I'm gonna go A+ on this because it's the ideal bourbon effect in the initial taste and the ending note.
Yeah.
And it's not overwhelming. It doesn't make you feel like you're crushing ethanol or starting your esophagus on fire.
Yeah.
You know, but it's got the right blend of what you would want and expect from a bourbon. Yep. So if someone is new to drinking bourbon and they're in a conversation with somebody who has a lot of experience drinking bourbon, that person will inform the noob about what to expect. This is kind of what it's like. And then when they drink this, it'll hit all of that on the head.
Sure. I agree with that. I agree. So A+ on the initial taste?
Yeah.
All right. Ending note. I'm getting a little oak and burn. So
yeah,
this is a higher proof. It's 90.8 proof. 90.4 proof. So it is pretty high for an entry-level bourbon. To me, this is all oak and burn at the end. But note, it does not hug you at the end. It hugs you in the beginning, like you said. But the alcohol goes down to let you know that you're drinking a 90 proof.
Yeah, and it's oily too, so it coats your entire palate.
Which is why I went up and grabbed this, because we're going to try this out. Our reverse osmosis water distilled with water from the Hemlock Lake. And try this out. Try this out for size.
Try it out.
See what oil or water does to the oil contents of it.
But yeah, I'm getting... It's an extremely faint honey, but it's just more of a oak and vanilla.
You want to try some or no?
No, I'm good. It's more of a oak and vanilla on the ending note. And there's no leather in this at all. You know, there's some leathers that you pick up a little bit.
Yeah, so the oil
in the nose, there's like nothing.
Yeah, the water brought out the baking spice and the vanilla.
Okay.
So the baking spice is more of a not beginning of the initial taste, like without the water it does. The baking spice is on the tail end of the initial taste and rolls into the ending note as it goes down your throat, which then it turns into the oak and vanilla ending with the alcohol taste.
Yeah.
Still though, this and again, with my beginning comments, I'm not saying Woodford's a bad bourbon whatsoever. This is a very, very, very good bourbon. But for some reason, this is put in an elite category, which I do not feel belongs in, based off of what Woodford's trying to do with this specific bourbon. Woodford has some very good products, but the basic bourbon and the Distillers Select, I'm not putting it on the same level as like a local bourbon for our standpoint. It's a very good entry bourbon. It's something that if you wanted to get away from Jack, if you wanted to get away from Crown or Jim Beam, this is something you should gravitate towards because it blends that in with a more exclusive brand behind it, I guess. But this isn't something that you need to pay $12 for an old fashioned for. That's not what I'm saying. So this is a very good bourbon to try. Highly recommend going and grabbing a bottle of it. But don't think of this as I'm drinking something that bourbon aficionados drink, because that's not the case.
Right. Ending note rating, A+.
A+ again.
All right, final rating.
All right.
Ready?
Yep.
Give me that countdown.
3, 2, 1.